Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Week 2 of the Football Championship with Leinster and Ulster quarterfinals on the bill. In Ulster we've got Tyrone against Cavan, Antrim against Armagh, and then in Leinster, Kildare against Westmeath, Meath versus Offaly, Wicklow against Dublin, and Louth against Laois. Enda McGinley is with myself and Rory to look ahead to it all. How are you, Enda?
I'm good. Enjoying the glorious summer championship weather.
Yeah. It does feel, Rory, like it's upon us for that reason. Suddenly everybody's just in better form. I know the football championship has maybe been a slow start, but it does feel like everybody's like, right, we're here now.
Yeah, it is. Like, the weather has been fantastic and we don't know if this is going to hold. So I think it's put people in good spirits. It's really important. Like, we are a nation of seasonal depressants. So I think this has been an absolute blessing, really. And hopefully it'll encourage big crowds to come out this weekend. You're right. The championship really hasn't fired on the first weekend. You're hoping for maybe a little bit better fare this weekend. The unfortunate aspects around that is, look, we might end up seeing again some more one-sided games just by the nature of teams meeting each other at different levels, and obviously the new rules can tend to exacerbate that. But that happened last year too, in terms of people's I suppose their impressions in the early rounds of the championship. It's kind of been the way that we come out of a national league whereby everyone is playing at the same level, and then it sort of comes way down before it starts to crank back up again. And look, maybe that's just the way it's going to be. Well, we have the calendar we have and the structure we have, but just something we don't really want to get into today.
Yeah. And that's fair, because look, I do think, Enda, we are going to you have to suck that up with the provincial championship. That's just part of the overall picture. I'm not going to get bogged down in that today, but I do think once we see these games week by week, we are probably going to have less of those hidings. That we are probably going to get a few of them this weekend, I would suggest as well. Rory's absolutely right, like we got last weekend, but it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast, and until there's a fundamental change in terms of provincial championship and stuff like that, then that's going to be it. Whenever, like, we even got a few hidings this year across the divisions, and that's in their own divisions, probably because of the new rules and everything. But and I do think the new rules will increase the potential for those hidings as well. But at the minute, last week's games were fairly competitive, although, like, there's Derry, Donegal. Derry were a wee bit off it, and Donegal won the match by 10. So margins of victory, in the same way as we know now that a 7-point half-time lead isn't much, we also have to accept that potentially a 10-point winning margin, whilst it's a strong win, it's not the absolute hammering that it might have been 5 years ago, if you know what I mean. But look, yes, it is well known by now that the provincial championships have their issues, and throw the big against the small with the obvious
Armagh, Antrim, Dublin, Wicklow. They're going to be extremely one-sided, aren't they?
Going to be there. But at the same stage, you see like a performance by Sligo last week, which I thought was highly commendable. So and teams can get a huge amount out of that. And equally, even in New York going down to Galway, I thought their performance, I know it was my brother, so I was watching it very keenly. He was on the line, but I thought their performance for 40-50 minutes was superb. And that's in an era, I think those teams in years gone by, they could park the bus and then just make it really, really awkward. But now they're actually having to come out and play football. And yes, in the New York example again, they lost the game heavily in the end. But for 40-50 minutes of that game, you got to see them playing proper football, not just parking the bus, and actually going playing. And I thought it was a great sign. So as those teams have to be braver, they'll also discover stuff about themselves too. But look, unfortunately, hammerings when teams come up against each other, and if they're playing one team, if the strong team's playing well and the weak team's playing poor, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, understandable. All right, this weekend then, Ulster. Let's start with Tyrone Cavan, because I do want to get your sense, Enda, on where you think Tyrone are at. Just given, obviously, going down is one part of it, but I think maybe the way that they finished, the way that they've played, some of their performances, there's got to be positives in there about what people are expecting from Tyrone in this championship.
Yes, so Tyrone, there has been much hope I suppose, from Malachy O'Rourke coming in and our under-20 successes, that there is a new group of talented young footballers. I think Tyrone, we would always be fairly confident in terms of the talent level of our footballers and their ability to compete with whoever in the country. But it hasn't always manifested itself. I think the team has lacked a certain spark over the years, for whatever reason. And they've been very hit and miss. So Tyrone, whenever their backs are against the wall, and they can produce some fantastic stuff, but equally they'll have some really poor performances too. And their All Ireland in 2021 was born out of a couple of really strong performances right at the end of that year, back to back, and they were able to go and win the All Ireland. So that's been the difficulty, the puzzle of Tyrone for a long number of years. Do I think that particular puzzle has moved a lot in the National League? Well, I think there's a positivity there because the good performances came towards the end. But if you look at it overall, there's plenty of questions there. There was plenty of poor stuff. For me, I don't yet see them playing at the same energy level or pace that the likes of a Donegal is bringing, that the likes of Kerry is bringing, the likes of Galway. And I think for them to truly go and push towards All Ireland, which I do believe they're capable of, whether this year or not, I don't know. They need to produce that really, really high energy football. But I think that's going to be a process for them to gradually come out of that. They focused on their defensive record in the league, and they came out of Division 1 with the best defensive record. So I'm really interested now to see, as the wheel turns, as the dial turns, Malachy O'Rourke, as I say, came in, focused defensive record, has nailed that. And it was the other side of it that was probably a wee bit disappointing for me at times in the league. I'll be really interested to see how that wheel now starts to turn as we head into the championship.
Yeah, that's my biggest question, Rory, about this team. It's not what they can do defensively. It's can they mix it with the biggest teams in terms of their scoring?
I think they can. I'm fascinated by Tyrone. I think Tyrone are real. I would give Tyrone a really good chance to potentially win the Ulster Championship. Now, there's a lot of hurdles to jump between here and then, but I think there's one thing that you could nearly always say about a Malachy O'Rourke team is there will be a clarity around how they will want to play. He obviously had kind of a stop-start nature to his league and very unfortunate to be relegated. And if you look at some of their results and their performances, yes, they did mix some very, very bad stuff, but with some sublime stuff at times. They took Dublin to the cleaners. They were very unlucky against Kerry. It was just one of those freakish days that David Clifford can produce, and only lost that match by a goal, and I think in the end. Drew with Galway, beat Donegal. These are all the teams that are being considered All-Ireland contenders. So the talent is 100% there. They have an array of forward options and attacking threats. Are they a little bit suspect, particularly maybe in their full back line where they can be got at? Potentially, yes. But I think if you look at in the round to get 7 points, to mix sort of 3 wins, 3 defeats, gives you a sense of the sort of league campaign that they have. But you've got to caveat that then as well, and Enda will know this only too well. Like, they were shorn of the Evergal lads for large parts of it, and they are huge players, leaders. You know, they would be key for any team. Now they'll have bedded in. I think they have a pretty good consistency around team selection. We know Malachy will put a huge focus on championship. He's a championship manager. That's always the sense you get with Malachy. And I think they'll have a very, very good season. They're a team for me now that I think are well worth watching. And this might be a bit outlandish, but I think they could win comfortably at the weekend.
Do you? It's interesting because I think maybe given what happened last year, I think it's just Tyrone's sense
It was
of
a crazy
not
game
getting
last year, though.
caught. Yeah. But
Yeah.
day one out though, Enda, these are the days where you sort of feel like, right, okay, we can either go and we can lay out our stall and do as Rory said, and we put in a big win and everybody's talking about us, or you can look jittery and everybody's saying, I don't give him a chance.
And to be absolutely straight, that's probably more of the performance. I think it'll be for me, and it is a weakness of the Tyrone psyche, and it is something I admired so much about the likes of that Dublin team. The Tyrone psyche is come out fighting when it's not expected of you. Come out like the chips in the shoulder, we love them. Like they're chips in the shoulder and just coming out. So into a game like this against Cavan, the boys will be wanting to produce a performance. They will respect Cavan because I think Cavan had a very credible Division 2 campaign, almost promoted right at the death. And they have some serious players. And obviously last year's game will be fresh in their memory. But I think the Tyrone psyche will be that they'll be going into this game thinking, right, if we mind dot our I's and cross the T's, we'll be okay. So that then means they'll not be coming out thinking, boys, it is everything we've got here. We have to be on the absolute edge of whatever we've got. We have to produce it here to go into this game, to hold on to our life in this game and take everything we can to the opponent and take them down. That lights the fires and pushes, usually, for me, Tyrone teams to a different level. Those ingredients for me aren't in this game, so I would expect a more potentially jittery performance. If the boys click and really play well, they have the potential to do damage to any team. But I'm not expecting a showboating performance or really dominant performance, and I would factor into that the fact that I think Cavan are a very, very credible opponent.
One last question on Tyrone before we move on to the other game, Enda. On Rory's point about them being potentially Ulster contenders, do you think that would be important to this team in the way that we've heard Jim McGuinness talking about Ulster being, the be all and end all? Malachy has always gone hard at the Ulster Championship, as Rory said. I wonder, in terms of their own milestones and their own markers, is Ulster something that they discuss?
I don't imagine it would be something they would discuss, but I do think it would be a really valuable thing for them. Like the potential, if Tyrone win this weekend, and we're presuming Armagh are going to come through, that thing that I was talking about there, about that special place in terms of mindset, that's there for the semi-final.
Yeah.
So if the results go to plan this weekend, then I will feel we'll get a much truer sense of where Tyrone are at and that potential for an Ulster title. Because again, if they come through like that Tyrone Armagh match, that could be, if Tyrone are full out and Armagh's full out, that could be something else. And will be the first acid test of all those teams that sat watching Armagh last year thinking, jeepers, we can beat Armagh, that can be us. Well, the proof will be in the pudding very, very soon for those teams whenever they try to take down Armagh in the championship. But so Tyrone this weekend, I think, have enough to get the job done. Whether the Ulster campaign, I agree with her, it is in their potential envelope. But we'll see. We haven't seen, for me, I haven't seen any evidence in the league that they have played at a level compared to the likes of Armagh and those other top teams. But I do believe it's there. And Malachy coming in first year in, we're going to see a progressive build up. So where that goes, we don't know yet.
Yeah,
and look, Cavan aren't without hope, and I have some Cavan friends that I don't want them to expect to think that we're completely dismissing them, but their record against Tyrone is atrocious for a start. I don't think they've beaten Tyrone since the 80s in the championship, and these things do matter. There is tradition. If tradition does count for something. But look, I think Paddy Lynch may be fit, has played no football, obviously had a very bad cruciate. Garrod McKiernan is back now. Look, he's obviously 35, but he's playing that bear in the square role, and you might see something slightly more direct from Cavan. We haven't seen it heretofore. They have plenty of scoring threats up front. Dara McVeety, obviously Garrod McKiernan and Cian Madden. They do have players up front that can rack up a score, but I think similarly
they threw Jared Smith into full forward in some of the league games too, and he was really effective for them. And Tyrone without Padraig Hampshire have looked a wee bit shaky at the back. He's such a huge player for them, so there is potential. We know size definitely gives teams a big benefit at the minute, and Cavan have that. So yeah, I'd agree with Rory now. They have definitely much to say in this game on Sunday.
Okay. I'm sure that you probably both feel that one may be closer than the other one, because look, even you being involved with Antrim over the years, and then you seeing what they've progressed, for them to go and beat the All-Ireland champions this weekend is a significant test that I don't think anybody expects them to pass. So this could be a tricky afternoon.
Yeah, tricky afternoon, and the the part of the Tyrone psyche that I would give out about sometimes whenever we don't come out and hit our full level, sometimes whenever we're expected to win in games. Armagh to me look a serious outfit. Their performances haven't been consistent in terms of the league, definitely not. But they are a team that just always is serious, look serious about their business and punch hard. And the sheer competitiveness within that squad, the sheer depth of their squad, and the number of established names that will be sitting on a bench means the boys on the pitch, everybody's pushing. So I expect Armagh to produce a really good performance. For Antrim, it's exceptionally difficult, and for me, and that's the annoyance of the Corrigan Park thing. It should never have been, in my opinion, an issue. The fact that they had to make, the Antrim players had to make such a big song and dance about it, puts the pressure back on their shoulders. Antrim should be coming in here completely free hit, and to a large extent they do. Completely free hit, no expectations, and a lovely freedom to go and just give it their absolute best. Whereas now there is that sense, and they'll hear it from their critics within every county has their own critics, and there'll be critics everywhere. Well, look, you've cried enough about getting this ground now. Let's see what you can do about it. And suddenly the pressure is on them to produce a performance, which is a really unfair situation when it should never have been an issue at all. They never should have had to do any of that stuff that they had to get involved in, and probably even that distraction didn't help, and probably had a hand in their relegation in the end up, if you know what I mean. Because I think they're a better team than that. I think they're a solid Division 3 side, and if they're going well, they will occasionally push on up towards 2. But yeah, look, Sunday's going to be a potentially difficult day. I would love the longer they can stay in that game and give it their all. There's plenty of good footballers there, absolutely. And Andy has done a really solid job. I think the relegation has been unfortunate, but it will hit them. The relegation will have hurt them too.
Yeah. It's kind of mad though, Rory, that players have to get involved in something like that. Then finally they get their way, and then they see their throw-in time a Saturday afternoon at 12:30. You know, I don't know, is it almost a kick in the face to everybody?
Jacqui, you wouldn't put a Go Games match on at 12:30 on a Saturday. I mean, it's a really bizarre one. I don't know whether that's a scheduling issue. It could potentially be. I know BBC are carrying the game live, and I'd imagine they're busy enough throughout the course of the rest of the day with maybe other sports, and as a result had to pull the throw-in time that far forward. Yeah, like it's not ideal to be playing a championship match at that hour of the day, like 12:30 on a Saturday before lunchtime. But look,
it means you're gathering in the dressing room for your Ulster Championship game at 11 o'clock. That feels more
on a
like
Saturday.
That feels more like an under 12 game. If you know what I mean, like it just. And even you think about then your food and nutrition. It's just like, I suppose Antrim would always have felt there's a certain amount of disrespect and that they're not taken seriously, and then other people will say, well, look, you have to play at a certain level to be taken seriously, etc., etc. But I think every team is due respect. The whole Corrigan Park thing smelled of something that wouldn't happen. A big team and playing the game at 12:30 on a Saturday wouldn't seem to happen with a big team. So from an Antrim point of view, there would still be the smell of disrespect about that. Whether or not it probably is a scheduling thing in behind the scene, but certainly, again, a big team doesn't seem to hit into those scheduling issues just as quick.
Here's your Corrigan Park, and here's your 12:30 throw. Now, just going to throw that in on top as well. So, yeah, strange one.
Strange one. What about the All-Ireland champions, Rory? Because they've had a bit of a tricky winter, you know, obviously different things happening off the pitch, but then even when they got on the pitch, it was a little bit stop-start. And I think a lot of people are intrigued as to, yes, everyone expects they're going to win this game at the weekend. But then if they were to come up against a Tyrone, let's say in a semi-final, they're going to have to find their feet pretty quickly if they want to continue the trajectory that they were on last year.
And it's a long time since Armagh. I know they're the All-Ireland champions, and look, ultimately that's the one you really, really do want to win. But I don't think they've won the Ulster Championship. Are we going back to 2008? I should have checked that. My apologies. But it's a long time. It's a long time since they were Ulster champions, and it's definitely a box that they would want to tick. They've been in a couple of finals, as we know, in recent times. Last one on the penalty shootout, which was very harsh last year to Donegal. And look, I'd say it's probably no different to Clare hurling in a Munster hurling context. I'd say it's that little box that might just be nagging away at Ciarán McGeaney and potentially the players themselves. They'll navigate this particular hurdle quite comfortably on Saturday. I think what we will get a good sense of from their point of view is just their mindset. Like, I think their league form was patchy at times. They really seemed to target their home fixtures. They were a little less convincing on the road. I thought Kerry really, put them to the sword below in Tralee that night, and they showed that they looked a little bit off it. But when it mattered and when they looked interested, and which you obviously assume most teams will be when it comes to championship, that they were able to switch it on when required. And I think, like, look, you're not going to learn a huge amount about them this weekend. I think there's bigger tests down the road, and they've been, as you said, the subject of a lot of different stuff, whether it was Rian O'Neill, whether it was the team holiday, whether it was, Kieran maybe giving out about the rules. Obviously, then the Corrigan Park thing thrown into the mix. So there's been a lot of noise, we'll say, outside the camp. I think they'll just be glad to get back to playing football, knockout football now once again, which is where they're kind of at their best. And yeah, like we won't learn a huge amount, as I say, but Armagh right in this.
Yeah. And that's probably the sense everybody still has about them, Enda, that they can turn it on when they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I have been hugely impressed with them. I've done co-com on two of their games, so I've been up close with them. Their power and their pace is immense. Now they're very organised in attack. They've certain things that they're absolutely working on. They've got goalkeeping things that they're sorting out as well, obviously. But I've been very impressed with them. And for a team coming back off the All Ireland, and obviously the issues associated with the team holiday and that and everything, I think they're in a good place, and they'll be looking forward to getting back into the serious business.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if that game is going to be a large winning margin for one team, then I would imagine in Leinster, we're going to have a bit of that as well. Dublin Wicklow, the last time they met, 23 points between them, Enda, and you feel even with the new rules, what we're talking about, this could be another one of those kind of outings for Wicklow as well.
Yeah, it is possibly just the rules really do rob the underdog of some of the standard things tactically that you would use to try to keep yourself in games, and allows the big team, if they are really hungry and really up for it and really want to do a job on you, they can, like, it's there for them. So certainly Wicklow were up against it. Wicklow have been exceptionally unlucky in terms of not getting their promotion as well. They were right there, a couple of late frees against Limerick in their second last game was the difference in the end up, and by all accounts there was there was complaints or possible complaints there. So Wicklow will feel hard done by. They will have their eye on a good potential Talton Cup run. This Sunday for them is about a credible performance. Can they do that? I think they can, because again, Dublin, where are Dublin exactly? I don't know. They've a lot more inexperienced players in there than what they had. They don't have that aura, and we can see what happens teams when teams lose an aura. We can see what has happened Derry when they've lost it, and we can see what has happened Donegal when they've got an aura. Dublin now are still a really good team, no doubt about that, but they no longer have this aura that just breaks team spirit even before they step on the pitch with them. Wicklow will believe that whenever they look at the Dublin team sheet, that they can get in and match a number of those players and go about their business with a degree of confidence. So, look, I think the result for me is beyond doubt, and it might look a harsh margin at the end of it, but I would expect for the vast majority of this game for Wicklow to be competitive in it. Maybe run out, the scoreline might look harsh at the end of it, but I would think for 40-50 minutes of this game I'd be really hopeful that Wicklow can give a really, really good account of themselves and build on the misfortune of missing out in promotion and build towards what could be a decent Talton run.
It's hard to know, Rory, what a credible performance is, because if you're putting it down to a scoreline, that's very difficult. If it's maybe more for a manager, what do I take out of a performance, particularly against a Dublin team who, John Small returning, they are finding some leaders and probably are going to build into this tournament. So you do just fear for Wicklow, like what actually would you even be looking for out of this?
Yeah, I suppose if you're Oisín McConville, you're having very good conversations with the groundsman this week about how he lines that pitch, because you want to keep it as small as possible, and you would be obviously pulling those lines in, make it as tight as you possibly can. You don't want to be giving the Dublin forwards the likes of the Conor Callaghan's recently named Dublin captain. I'm sure that'll fire him up. There'd be a packed house down there. It'll be a good atmosphere. It'll be a good spectacle. It's actually quite a scenic ground in many ways. But the result will be 20 plus in the end. I really wouldn't think Wicklow will be capable of this will be one of the things that people will start to give out about when we get to Monday morning, the sort of lopsided nature where a Division 4 team comes up against a Division 1 team. But that's the nature of the provincial championships, and you're going to get these. You're going to get these every year. Is that a reason not to have them? Well, look, that's a moot point. Is it a reason not to have them at this point of the season? Again, another one for discussion. I think it's going to be very, very tough. I think from Dublin's perspective, their main mission to go down there, get a kind of a professional job done, for the want of a better word. Don't pick up any major injuries to any key players. Maybe introduce some of the lads that we've seen over the course of the league, and get more championship minutes into them, albeit playing against a lower level of opponent, and start really building towards. Look, Dublin are going to win Leinster as well. So they might necessarily find the challenge becomes any much more difficult when they move on to the next round. So this is a lose-lose situation from a Dublin perspective. You do not want to pick up injuries, and you just want to go down there, put in a performance, and move on.
15 in a row is what they're going for in Leinster. Thankfully, I think the other games are a little bit more competitive. So let's take a look at them, Enda. And I do feel Kildare Westmeath seems to me like the pick of the round, actually almost over the course of the weekend, because of what you see from, I don't know, the opportunity here. Similarly with Meath and Offaly, it's just for these teams to potentially be looking at Sam Maguire football. The prize that is on offer for somebody in Leinster is actually quite significant.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this game and the Meath game as well, for me, looking into this weekend, they're the games that I will be most looking forward to see where those middle of the road teams are, because it's exceptionally hard to get a gauge on them, especially like the Kildare case where they were in two different divisions in the National League, but one at the lower half of one and one at the upper half of the other, and I don't think there's a big difference between 2 and 3 at that ends of the table. And there's so much to wonder about Kildare still. That hasn't changed. That they have been the team that everybody has spent more time wondering about probably for a number of years now. And I think even the fact that they lost that league final, I think of all the teams, they were a team that definitely would have been going after that league final, and then they still come up short. So those questions have just grown from that, and that weak confidence frailty. It feels a long time already since the start of the league, those initial rounds of the league where they were flying out of the gate and people thought, oh, Kildare have rediscovered their mojo, they're going to storm out of Division 3. They had a huge head start, and then it was like they were running a 400-meter race, and they sprinted the first 100 meters, and then the rest of it has been pretty ugly since. But team very capable. Westmeath, my gosh, if Mayo went past a wake house a long time ago or a funeral and didn't stop, I wonder what Westmeath have done, because for a number of years now I have felt their run of luck has been atrocious. I don't know if there's a team in the country has lost more narrow games where they could have won, and yet it has consistently went against them. Like, I think it's a huge run now since their last win, because they lost
all their league games. Sorry, they drew one, but
and I think even in the group stage last
year, all of them.
I think they lost them as well. So they have been, they're that team that has just found that step up. They are better than the results have shown, but they've just been really, really unfortunate. But I think if the squad has remained at confidence, which is exceptionally difficult with that run of results, but if the squad has remained at confidence, or maintained a confidence and a positive energy about themselves and an ambitious streak about themselves, then I think Kildare's there for the taking for Westmeath. Absolutely I do. So that game, yeah, I think that game, and a brilliant pitch, new bridge, everything else, I think that has the makings of a really, really good tie.
What do you think, Rory? Because Kildare, Enda's right, they showed so much promise, but yet on the biggest day, they didn't perform. So those questions that maybe everybody had about them are still hanging over them. And then Westmeath, as he says, can't buy a win, but one can turn everything around. And suddenly they're on a promise of potentially being in a Leinster final if they can get past the winners of Louth or Laois. And it's a phenomenal run and a turn of events.
Yeah, and they finished their league campaign with a draw against Roscommon, who obviously got promoted and maybe should have won that game as well. They were really unlucky not to win that game. It's a really odd fixture. They passed each other on the way up and down last year, where one was promoted, one was relegated, and they're after doing the same this year. So to go back to Enda's point originally, I think it's a well-made one. There's nothing between the teams, absolutely zero, because they're very much of a similar level. That's why it is a fantastic fixture in many ways. I think it'll be a really good game of football, and it'll be tight. Surely St. Conleth's Park has to be worth a couple of points to Kildare. They obviously will train there, they'll play there quite regularly, but that'll bring pressure as well. That brings pressure when you go. They have a great following. We know that there will be a good crowd in Newbridge on Saturday night. It's on, I won't say TV, but it's on a platform, which is GA Plus. So there will be a bit of a focus on it. And have Kildare shown or proven that they can deal with pressure? Have they shown and proven that they can handle, these types of things? The answer is probably no so far, really. And I think they will be, they will have to deliver something on Saturday night in a championship match against a local rival. I think we should get some class of a performance out of them. Whether that's going to be good enough, I'm not entirely sure either, because I think there's a lot more experience in this Westmeath team. They have, some players that have been around the block now for a long number of Luke Loughlin, Ray Kennellan. We know Kieran Martin is coming in there, however many years of incredible service he's given to the Westmeath cause, and still coming on and making a difference and making a contribution. I'm going to go for a narrow Westmeath win.
Wow. Right. Well, that'll be a turn up for the books. I think genuinely that has the potential to be one of the ties. Meath Offaly, I think, is the other interesting one in this Enda. Last weekend, you're looking at Meath scoring 130 and you're thinking this is a big score. I know it was against Carlow, but for a first outing for Robbie Brennan to be able to get a bit of faith back in his team after the backroom departures and everything that happened, I thought that was actually quite impressive last weekend.
Yeah, it was really impressive because that can very, very easily go a different way. Very easily, and I know whenever it turns out to comfortable win, it's that was always going to be the case, but that can really easily go a different way. I love this. I love the Kildare Westmeath because of the evenness of it. I love this one because of the contrast between the land of giants of Meath and the land of sheer energy and pace and speed that Offaly are bringing. And I thought Offaly in their Division 3 league win, some of the quality of their play, just that sheer ambition that they show in their play, that almost a fearlessness there, that we know that they're a young side, and they're playing like that too. The modern game, there's two things in the modern game seem to be really, really important. One is size, and you can't grow size, and the other is pace, and you can't create pace either. Offaly have pace to burn, and so they are playing their game according to that. Meath have size, and they're playing their game according to that. So it's a really, really lovely contrast. Again, I look at Offaly and I just sense there's a team there coming off the back of that. Obviously, I know Mickey Hart, I know that mindset. He would be rubbing his hands with this fixture. And saying that Meath were the one team that had turned over Tyrone team, even that team that I was a part of in the noughties when we were at a big height, Meath turned us over. So Meath, Mickey is always, there's been wee issues with Meath in the past. But Offaly will be fancying their chances of a famous win. They're on a wave of momentum, and those waves can do serious damage whenever they get built, and their wave of momentum is greater than what Meath have at the minute. Even though Meath did get that win lastly, the absence of those coaches will still be an impact. The reasons behind the departure will still be a discussion point. So that is still there in that camp, whether or not they got the good win the last time or not.
And when you're a young team, Rory, like Offaly, and you become used to winning, you know, they've come through, they've obviously had success at underage level. They won 6 of their 8 league games. They won a big final in Croke Park. They've had the big days. These are all experiences that young players are building on week. And that's what Mickey Hart is going to be telling them. This is just another marker. We just keep doing it. And like, he's getting the fruits of the labor.
Yeah. But like their season is already a success.
Yeah.
So I think, and they obviously they won't agree, and they certainly won't entertain notions like everything from here on is a bonus. Chances are they're not going to make a Leinster final because of the way the draw has panned out, and that means they're going to be playing Tally Cup football for the rest of the year. And I think I'd give Offaly a really good chance at winning that, which will guarantee Sam Maguire Cup football in 2026. So there's loads for Offaly still to play for. I think Enda's right. I think they might struggle a little bit on primary possession at the weekend. Just getting their hands on the ball might prove a problem. But if they do, the skill levels that they can execute, the pace that they have, they will cause Meath trouble. But ultimately, I mean, look, we've seen now the prominence and the importance of kickouts, and just like, because everything is lamped, everything is bombed out to the middle now, and it's just, it's basically a war zone, like in terms of trying to get that initial primary possession, whether it's broken or caught clean. And not sure if they have the sort of troopers to kind of get into the trenches and win that in the physical sense just yet. But like they've probably been, they were probably told that ahead of the Kildare game, and they managed. Now, so look, and Talchin, as we know in Navan, it plays quite open and quite big, which might give them opportunities to run the ball. And you'd give them a chance, but you would have to assume, again, given home advantage being a key aspect in championship, would favour Meath to just about get over the line. But a fascinating contest, this one as well.
Yeah, definitely. Last brief word then on the other quarterfinal, Laois against Louth. I mean, Louth are a division above them, Enda. They played in the final last year. On paper, you're thinking Louth are a better team than Laois, but in reality, what are we going to see?
Yeah, I haven't seen a huge amount of Laois, to be absolutely honest. So, but I have seen a decent amount of Louth.
Yeah.
Again, I think the job that they have done has been remarkable, because they have dealt with a massive injury crisis during the National League to a similar level of Derry, and yet held their own and had plenty of very decent results during that phase. So I'm expecting Louth to win there, but that, I have to be completely honest, I don't know Laois well enough at this stage. Obviously I knew them a few years ago, and they had a really commendable run. But for me, that would be a Louth win, and particularly depending on their injury situation, how many of those key players that they get back will depend how much. Because obviously Louth have had an excellent record in the Leinster Championship, but I think to get back to that same level again, they need their full deck.
Yeah, because they've consistently gone to the well with that same group of players over the last number of years, Rory. And you would say in some ways, maybe they've overachieved with that group of players.
He's got Louth, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got Craig Lennon back this week, which
Yeah.
was obviously missing for a good chunk of the league campaign, and he's definitely got a few players back. He's been missing quite a few through injury, but he did. Look, I guarantee you, Jacqui, in about 30 or 40 years' time, and we're looking away into the future, Louth will be one of the preeminent forces in GAA, because just the sheer weight of numbers and population, the place is exploding. You know, there's thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people are going to be living there, because it's just the way the demographics. It's a big problem. It'll be a big problem for the GAA actually, but like they are starting to make incremental improvements already, and even in a football context, they have been a solid Division 2 team now for the last couple of years. They've made a couple of Leinster finals. They're playing at a higher level than Laois. Laois, as we know, the one thing that Laois do have, I suppose, is they have a championship victory already under their belt last week. They have to play again this week, which is, again, an interesting calendar situation. But like, they beat Wexford, who obviously had played 6 weeks in a row at that stage. Was still a good win for them. So they'll go into this. I think the game is on in Newbridge as well. And I just think Louth are playing at a higher level with the injection of players back that they have been missing throughout the course of the league. I think they'll just have a little bit too much nous and a bit too much experience, and you would expect them to get through.
All right, we
shall
see.
If they do have good players back, they might hit that nice moment where they've got through a rocky part of the year, and they now can just, right, our season's starting proper now, and push on from there. But look, if the weather holds, hopefully we'll get another good weekend's football.
Fingers crossed, lads. I'm looking forward to it. Enda, thanks a million for being with us. Myself and Rory will be back after the weekend to look back on what has hopefully been a sunshine-filled, beautiful weekend of football. Enjoy wherever you're going to your matches, and we'll talk to you next week.
Lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.